Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto took Republic City by storm with the Avatar Korra. Part 3. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Naruto looked around in confusion as he watched the scene in front of him. In the middle of some forest he saw a blonde boy that looked much like him, but with whisker marks and an awesome orange jumpsuit. He was sleeping in the middle of the forest when all of a sudden a girl with black hair and brown eye along with a pink dress of sorts approached the sleeping blonde. The girl shook the downed blonde awake. "Hey, you shouldn't sleep out here, you'll catch a cold," she said. He stirred awake and looked at the girl in front of him and blushed. "Who are you?" he asked, showing that he had blue eyes. The girl giggled. "I'm Haku, I was picking some herbs when I saw you sleeping and decided to wake you up," she responded. "Oh. I'm Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto," the blonde said with a nod. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, his name was Naruto too. Haku stared at him for a bit. "Are you a ninja?" she asked. "Eh? How do you know?" the blonde asked in surprise. The girl giggled again and pointed at his headband. The other Naruto touched his headband and laughed at himself. "Oh yeah, guess this gave me away. Why are you out here this early?" she asked. "Oh, I was training," Naruto said with enthusiasm. "What are you training for?" she asked. "Oh, I wanted to be Hokage, the strongest ninja in my village, that way everyone will respect me," he said with passion. "Hokage? Do you have anyone precious to you?" she asked. "Eh? When someone has someone truly precious to them, I believe that is when they are truly strong," the girl said passion. Naruto got into a thinking position and nodded. "Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Then you'll get strong," the girl said as she stood up. "By the way, I'm a boy." "Eh? Eh?" both Narutos said in shock. "No way, he's prettier than Sakura-chan," the dream Naruto said in further shock. Later, Naruto was fighting a boy in a mask and was covered in some red energy and was surrounded by what looked like ice-like mirrors. He smashed one mirror and when the masked boy appeared out of the mirror he went and punched him. As he did, the boy's mask blew off. Naruto's rage died as he looked at the boy he met in the forest. "You?" he said in confusion. "Why did you stop?" the boy said. Naruto was confused. How was he supposed to fight? "Someone I know," Naruto said as he woke up from the dream. He shook his head trying to make heads or tails of his dream and looked at Kurama. That was a weird dream, boy. He got up to get ready for work and missed the smile that graced the fox's face. Police station. Naruto sighed as he sat in his chair at the police station. He looked at the medal he received for protecting the civilians during the beginning of the Equalists' rebellion and threw it in his cabinet. It didn't really matter to him. What did matter to him was that his mother was taking much of the hits from the council about Amon having successfully infiltrated and getting into the arena like he did, which resulted in their failed mission to stop him. Bunch of two-faced old crows. Naruto looked at the picture on his desk and smiled as he picked it up and examined it. The picture held two small children, one boy and one girl. The boy had blonde hair and green eyes, while the girl had black hair and green eyes. It was a picture of both him and Asami, roughly around the time they first met. Flashback. Lin had sent Naruto to a prestigious school in order for him to learn, and also due to his wealthy status. The 4-year-old Naruto was at recess and was lying on a bench, watching the clouds float by when suddenly a shadow covered him. "What are you doing?" asked the voice of a girl. Naruto turned his head to see a girl with should-length black hair and green eyes. "I'm just watching the clouds. Wanna join me?" Naruto asked. The girl smiled. "Sure, I'm Asami Sato," she said as she sat down and held out her hand. Naruto smiled at her. Naruto Bifong," he said as he did the same and shook her hand. Flashback end. Naruto got out of memory lane as he heard Kurama yip at him. He looked down his desk to see the fox sitting on it and waving his tail back and forth. Naruto smiled at the fox and petted his head. "Sorry buddy, got lost in the photo." He extended his arm and let the fox run up to his shoulder and started to walk out of his office. He headed down the hall and saw Hiroshi with his mother and Tenzin. "Hey old man Hiroshi," Naruto said jovially as he approached them. Hiroshi cracked a smile at his nickname from the blonde, while Lin and Tenzin sighed at the boy's behavior. "Naruto my boy, hard at work I see," Hiroshi said as he extended his hand and Naruto shook it. Naruto shrugged at him. I heard you received a medal," he asked with a bit of happiness in his tone, as the young man had indeed earned it. Naruto snorted. "All I did was my job. They put me on a pedestal and used mom as a scapegoat," he finished with a growl. Lin sighed. "It was going to happen. I was the one who was so sure I could prevent Amon from doing something, and in the end I fell right into his hands. You did the best you could and saved the civilians from being his hostages." She stated, while she was willing to take the blame for this, she was in fact very proud of Naruto for his quick thinking and leadership skills to take control in the middle of that chaos. He was truly going to be a great chief one day. No one could have been prepared for something like that, Lin, but we did the best we could. Tenzin commented solemnly as he tried his best to protect Lin from the fallout, but Terlok had other ideas. Still, whoever made those gauntlets is a true genius. Naruto said as he had indeed examined the ones he had recovered from some of the arrested equalists. Lin sighed, why must you marvel at a weapon being used against us? Lin asked with a bit of irritation as her son always loved new technology. It was one of the reasons why he and Hiroshi got along so well. The master inventor had commented that if Naruto was very bright and enjoyed their talks about new and revolutionary ideas that could help people. Why would they be a genius, Naruto? Tenzin asked with interest, as Naruto's input was very insightful. Think about it, by giving this to the non-bending officers, they would not only be more effective, but also better protect themselves from criminal benders too with additional evasive training. By giving these to civilians with the right permits, we could give both benders and non-benders a chance to defend themselves against thugs and triad members. Not only that, if we can augment it into our metal bender uniform, we could send jolts to stun captured criminals, and other ideas. Naruto said, beaming at the possibilities of new uses for the gauntlets. Still, if some run-of-the-mill criminals get their hands on it, who knows what could happen? Lin argued with her son. Fine, but I still think this invention has possibilities and a lot of potential for great things. Naruto finished with a sigh. This is just like the time you thought we should teach both our bending and non-bending officers Kai blocking. Lin stated as they continued to walk down the hall with Hiroshi and Tenzin behind them with amused smiles on their faces. Which is still a good idea as I learned it and use it to take down bending criminals at times. Also, it would bring better unity with benders and non-benders by encouraging them to join the force and work together. Naruto argued back. Tenzin sighed at the two, they were both so headstrong about when they thought they were right, but it just showed how the two were related. Hiroshi shook his head and laughed slightly at the agreement. It was one of the reasons he liked Naruto. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind and was always looking out for the little guy, one could say, as he always placed a big emphasis on bender and non-bender unity. Oh, I just remembered. Naruto said in realization and turned to Hiroshi. Mom was wondering if she could get a motorcycle too, old man. He said. Lin nodded to this. Yes, I have to agree with him on that as I can clearly see the advantages of having them. In fact, I may discuss with you later on a contract for most of the force to have them. She said in a business tone. Hiroshi nodded. Of course, come over for tea sometime and we can discuss the details. He said as he turned to Naruto. How is it riding, by the way? It has been a year or so if I remember correctly. He wanted to know in case it needed a tune-up or something. Naruto shook his head. She still drives as perfectly as the day I got her, old man, and more. He really loved that bike and how awesome it felt driving it. Excellent. Hiroshi said with a smile. Hiroshi, if you remember anything else about Amon's attack, be sure to let us know. Lin said as they entered the lobby. I'll be sure to, Lin. I want these equalists to pay for what they've done. Hiroshi said as he nodded to Naruto and then saw Korra in the lobby and nodded to her as well. Naruto turned to see Korra and smiled and saw her interacting with Tano. While he didn't really like the bastard and was angry at him for cheating his team to winning the championship, he still felt sorry for him that he lost his bending. We're ready for you now. Tenzin said to Tano as the former bender stood up. He gave Korra a mock salute. See you around, Avatar. He said as he cracked a tiny smile as he teased her and walked away with Lin and Tenzin. Naruto walked over to Korra and smiled at her. Hey, water princess, wanted to visit me at work? He asked with a teasing tone. Korra smiled at him and lightly punched him in the shoulder. Not really, but I guess it's just a bonus. She said with a hidden smile. Kurama yipped and jumped off Naruto's shoulder and landed into Korra's arms, and he licked her face, getting a giggle out of the young avatar. Naruto rolled his eyes at the fox. Come on, I'll take you home. He said as he walked out the door to the parking lot. Naruto followed as Kurama sat on her shoulder. He approached his bike while putting on his goggles and tossed Korra the helmet that came with the bike and flipped his hand by his head and his uniform's helmet came up. Meet the Narucycle. He said dramatically. Korra rolled her eyes. I think you need a better name for it. She said as she put on the helmet while Naruto sulked for a moment at hearing the name being criticized by his girlfriend. Kurama whined at his owner's stupidity. Naruto got on the bike and Korra put Kurama in her jacket and sat behind him while wrapping her arms around his stomach. Kurama popped his head out from her jacket to see. Hold on tight. Naruto said as he peeled out of the parking lot. Yahoo! Korra shouted at the top of her lungs as she enjoyed the speed they were going at. Kurama ducked his head back into Korra's jacket, hoping they wouldn't crash. Wait, this was Naruto he was talking. As they rode back to Air Temple Island, Korra got an idea. "Hey, why don't we stop somewhere?" she shouted as they zoomed down the street. She wanted some private time with him for a bit. "Like where?" Naruto shouted back in question. She didn't know where to stop. She looked around as they rode and she saw a snowy hill and pointed to it, "Right there," she exclaimed with enthusiasm. Naruto laughed at her energy and rode to the hill and came to a stop at the base of it. Korra jumped off the bike and placed her helmet on the seat while Kurama jumped out of her jacket and looked as though he was kissing the ground. Naruto waved his hand by his head and his uniform went back to normal. "Come on," she said as she pulled his arm as she forced him up the hill. Naruto shook his head at her antics and plopped down on the top of the hill with her as Kurama opted to stay by the bike. Korra smiled as she watched the sunset and looked at Naruto. "Asami invited me to her place tomorrow, you wanna come?" she asked a bit coyly. She was starting to get the hang of this flirting thing. Naruto rubbed his chin and thought, "Yeah, why not? I haven't been there in a while anyway," he said, as he still recalled how he had yet to beat the heiress in a Satomobile race, but he will someday, mark his words, he will race against that speed mistress and he would come out on top and finally put an end to her rubbing it in his face every time she won despite there being close matches. "So when did you first meet Asami?" Korra asked with much curiosity. "We actually met when we were at school when we were about 4 years old. A very preppy, rich, high society school," he said with a groan. "You would not believe how dull it was, I felt like I was going to lose my mind," he exclaimed with the added gesture of waving his hands in the air. Korra gave a quick laugh as she imagined Naruto acting all snotty like. Naruto whined at her laugh, "It isn't funny, water princess. I mean, I got into trouble just for doing a few pranks. The very thing I live to do for fun and amusement and they deny me that right. Rich schools are evil," he said as he finished with a small shiver. Korra patted his head mockingly. "They're there, those mean teachers are long gone now," she said in a tone that was usually reserved for children. Naruto playfully swatted her arm away and laid back into the snow. "You know, this feels nice," he commented. Korra laid back too and turned her head to see his face as she raised an eyebrow. "What is?" she asked with mild confusion. "This," he exclaimed, "just relaxing, no Amon, no Kai blockers, no police work, no Avatar business, and no fangirls. Just the two of us taking it easy and without having to worry about things right now," Naruto finished as he too turned his head to face her. Korra registered what he was saying and he was right. She was just relaxing, no impending doom over the horizon, no Avatar stuff to do, and no Lin to mess with her and her Naruto time. She really liked that last one considering she still felt like Lin was against her. "Hey, you wanna hear about the time Asami met Grandma Toph?" Naruto asked, smiling and chuckled a bit as it was really funny. Korra cracked a smile. "This I have to hear," she said as she sat up and crossed her legs as she rested her elbows on her knees and had her hands holding up her chin. "Well, it went like this," Naruto started. Flashback. Asami was wearing a fancy dress and was walking or stumbling next to Naruto as she tripped over the hem of the dress occasionally. "Why are you wearing a dress, klutz?" Naruto asked as he had his arms around the back of his head. "Please stop calling me that," Asami said with a small growl. You see, Asami happened to be a bit danger prone as she trips and falls on occasions, as well as getting paint on her, specifically orange paint, which happens to Naruto's favorite color, you get the idea. So, in order to give her an appropriate nickname, Asami the Klutz was born. And I'm wearing this because I'm about to meet Toph Bifrong, the greatest earthbender in history. Asami says in a matter-of-fact tone. You do know she's blind, right? She can't really see you all fancied up like that, Naruto pointed out. Asami stopped in her tracks and faced the blonde as she opened and closed her mouth to try and say a rebuttal, but she had nothing. They continued walking till Asami spoke up. Why didn't you say anything about it? She asked plainly. Naruto shrugged. I don't know, he said. Asami sweat dropped at his reply and shook her head. It was a typical Naruto answer, that's for sure. They finally entered the Bifrong mansion. Come on, this way, Naruto said as he pointed upstairs. Asami followed Naruto and they walked to the end of the hall. Naruto knocked on the door and they heard an elderly voice, come in. Naruto opened the door and Asami saw an elderly, yet still strong, woman with short gray hair with bangs that slightly covered her milky eyes. She had a few wrinkles under her eyes and was wearing a long-sleeved green shirted with a pale yellow short-sleeved blouse over it and was currently relaxing in bed. All in all, she was an elder woman who looked good for her age, as she still appeared like she could take on anyone who challenged her. The elderly woman cracked a grin that Asami had seen on Naruto many times. Well, if it isn't the Munchkin. You seem to have brought a friend too, she said in a jovial tone. GT. Naruto exclaimed as he jumped at her and hugged her. Hey. Easy with the jumping Munchkin, Toph said as she caught him with a grunt. GT. Asami wondered out loud. It's the Munchkin's little nickname for me, and it's a girl too, finally getting a girlfriend. Toph joked as she poked him. Naruto blushed a bit as he let go of the hug and walked to Asami. Klutz, I would like you to meet Grandma Toph, or as I call like to her GT. He chirped. Asami, being raised with manners, curtsied. It's an honor to meet you. I'm Asami Sato. She said politely. She does know I'm blind, right? Toph pointed out as she moved out of the bed and planted her feet on the stone floor while showing her green pants and bare feet. She had felt the girl curtsied, but as everyone who knows her, she wasn't really into all that stuffy manner stuff. I told her that. Naruto with a sigh. Asami blushed in embarrassment and promptly stood up. Well anyway, how's it going Munchkin? Toph asked. Stop calling me that. Naruto asked with a small growl. Asami was amused by this and finally understood where Naruto got his teasing trait from. What are you going to do about it? Toph egged on. I'll take you down. Naruto proclaimed boldly. Toph snorted, yeah, like a little pebble like you can beat a mountain like me. She stated with a disbelieving look. Oh it is on wrinkles. Naruto shouted as he went for the attack. Bring it squirt. Toph said in return. 5 seconds later. Toph was sitting cross-legged on a face-down Naruto's back and she pumped her arms in the air. I've said it once and I'll say it again Toph rules. She shouted. Naruto groaned weakly, you're heavy. He said, trying to get back at her for beating him so quickly. Toph wiggled a bit, grinding into his back and put her hand to her ear. What's that? You say. Grandma can stay in this spot as long as she wants. Why you're such a good little munchkin aren't you? She said in a baby voice as she pinched his cheek. Asami was giggling like no tomorrow at the sight of Naruto beaten with such ease. Flashback end. By the end of the story, Korra was rolling on the ground laughing, ah ha ha, she whipped you so bad. She said as she tried to get her giggles in check as she sat up again. Yeah, laugh it up water princess. I bet you couldn't handle her either. He said as he pushed her shoulder playfully causing her to fall down once more. Korra snorted, I may be a bit of a hothead, but I'm not stupid enough to go against Toph Bifrong heck, I don't even dare go against your mom. Korra said as she smiled at him. Naruto huffed as he crossed his arms and looked at the sky to see it growing dark, wow, time flies when you're having fun. Let's get home water princess. He said as he helped her up. They rowed back to the dock and sailed to the island. Naruto walked Korra to her room and gave her a teasing smile, you sure you don't want me to be your teddy platypus bear? He said in a suggestive manner. His teasing worked as Korra grew bright red at the prospect and closed the door quickly. Naruto's laugh filled the hallway as he walked to his room with Kurama in tow. She was so fun to tease when it came to staying together in bed. Naruto was in his casual outfit wearing his green helmet and goggles as he rode his bike with Korra on his back and Kurama in a side basket that was meant for storing stuff to the Sato mansion. They pasted the front gate as the guard waved Naruto in and he parked with the assortment of cars that Hiroshi owned. He took off his helmet and brought down his goggles around his neck, come on water princess, I'll show you around. Naruto said as he placed his helmet on the bike seat and so did Korra as she nodded to him as she picked up Kurama. They walked down the hall till Korra saw an assortment of pictures. She looked at each of them and saw only Naruto and Asami in them. She had a slight frown on her face as she tried to make out some of the pictures. Some showed Naruto smiling as Asami seemed to have been caught in a bunch of different pranks, while the others were the exact opposite, with Asami smiling and Naruto covered in different pranks. What this? Asked Korra in wonder. That is the wall of victory and shame Avatar Korra. A butler said as he walked up to them. Hey pal, how's it going? Naruto asked as he shook the butler of the Sato's hand. The butler returned and smiled at the blonde, wonderful as always Master Naruto. He said in return. Wall of victory and shame? Korra asked with her head tilted. Master Naruto and Lady Asami tended to have a few prank wars back when they were children, and both he and she wished to chronicle them to look back on in the future. I believe that Master Naruto has one at his residence as well. Pao said as he looked at Naruto who nodded at the question. Wow, when you mentioned that you pranked, I was thinking just Korra trailed off as she got into a thinking position. That it was just little innocent things, right? Naruto asked with his trademark Bifrong grin. Korra blushed slightly at the grin, yeah. She answered. Pao raised an eyebrow at this, but said nothing about it. Thought he was happy for the young Bifrong, as Asami had gossiped about his budding relationship with the young Avatar. Right this way. Pao said as he led them to the pool. They walked in and saw both Asami and Meiko relaxing in the pool, and before they could even say hi, Bolin's voice shouted, earth-bending bomb. He exclaimed as he dove into the pool. Master Naruto and Avatar Korra have arrived. Pao announced, Kurama yipped at him, and Master Kurama. He said in a joking manner. Hey Korra, Naruto. Meiko said with a wave. Glad you could make it. Asami said and grinned impishly as she saw Naruto with her too. Welcome to paradise. Bolin said as he surfaced the water after his dive and opened his arms wide, then started to flout on his back and Pabu laying on his stomach. Looks like you guys settled right in. Korra joked as she sat down and set Kurama down as he sat in his own seat. Well, it isn't that hard to get settled in a place like this. Naruto added as he laid down in the chair next to her. Pretty much, except some forgot to ask her father if we could stay here. Mako said as he looked at Asami and swam toward Naruto and Korra. Asami swimming next to him said, yeah, but I smoothed it over with him. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Naruto snorted, please Klutz, you got the old man wrapped around your finger. He said while whirling his finger in the air. Asami pouted as she leaned over the edge of the pool, oh that is so not true. She said. Naruto stared at her blankly, and she caved. Okay, so maybe I do. She said. Yep. Naruto with a nod. Bolin got out of the pool with Pabu on top of his shoulder, this is the greatest place in the world. Watch this, he said as he stood in a regal manner, fetch me my towel good sir. He said. Yes, Master Bolin. Pao said in a neutral tone, but Naruto could easily tell from knowing the man that it also carried slight irritation. Naruto shook his head, you don't push the help too much, you treat them with respect, and they return it. He couldn't really blame Bolin for his excitement for having a butler due to his background, he just hoped that his fellow earthbender didn't push it too much. He would have to send Pao a fruit basket or something to make up for it. Master Bolin, I love this guy. Bolin said as he pointed at Pao, and he then stood straight and extended his arms while Pabu climbed on top of his head, now pat me dry. Bolin said and Pao did as instructed. As you wish. Pao said. Don't forget Master Pabu. Bolin added. Wouldn't dream of it sir. Pao said. After Pao was finished, Bolin jumped back into the pool, and Naruto winced, okay maybe 2 fruit baskets. So, what do you have planned for us today? Korra asked, let me guess, shopping, makeovers. She added with a bit of a condescending tone unintentionally. Bolin dunked Mako under the water and raised his hand, oh, I vote makeovers. He said as Mako dunked him under the water in return. No. Never again. Naruto shouted as he hid behind his chair and was shaking with a bit of fear. Everyone but Asami was wondering what his problem was. Asami seeing their confused faces, decided to fill them in as she walked out of the pool. Well when we were younger she started off, but Naruto interrupted her, shut up. He said in a warning tone. I decided to pull a prank on Naruto here. Stop it Asami. And tricked him into getting a. Naruto ran up to her and covered her mouth, you have nothing to say. He said with a bit of panic in his voice. Asami elbowed him in the gut, causing him to double over, a makeover, but added something more to it. Naruto got up and bear hugged her with one arm and covered her mouth with the other one, no you didn't. Asami got out of it and put him in a headlock as Korra and Mako didn't like the closeness the two friends were having, and put him in a dress too. It's on the wall of victory and shame if you want to see. She said as she let go of Naruto as he started to cry a bit. My manliness went down deeply that day. He said in a depressed tone. Kurama yipped at him as if he was calling him an idiot as the fox shook his head at his owner's antics. For the sake of Naruto's sanity, I have something else in mind. Asami said. The Sato Speedway. The gang was sitting on the bleachers as they watched 2 Satomobiles race by. Pretty cool huh? Asami asked as she saw Korra's face as the young avatar was excited by what was happening right now. Way cooler than a makeover. Korra said as she watched the cars go at it. This is where Future Industries test drives its automobiles. Ever been behind the wheel? She asked. The only thing I know how to drive is a polar bear dog. Korra said. Asami saw Naruto's legs shacking from watching the race and knew exactly what he wanted. Want me to take you for a spin? Asami asked. Korra turned to Asami in surprise, but smiled, let's do it. She exclaimed. Asami turned to Naruto, hey Naruto, want a shot at revenge again? She asked in a pompous tone, knowing it would annoy the blonde. Naruto growled and put his goggles over his eyes, you're so going down this time Klutz. He stated. Asami rolled her eyes, you say that every time, and yet I still win. She returned. Everyone, once again, wondered what was going on and once again, Asami filled them in as Naruto walked to the track. Naruto and I race sometimes, and due to his competitive nature, he doesn't like to lose so much since he's never beaten me once in a race. She said and everyone nodded, they were starting to understand Naruto and Asami friendship today. Naruto got into a car and looked Asami right in the face and gave her the, you're going down gesture, as Asami looked right at him with a smirk, as Korra was in the back of her car. The checkered flag was swung and the two went at it. Naruto took the lead and drifted into a corner, and Asami followed. Asami gained some speed and was inching towards Naruto, and final was neck and neck with him. Naruto shifted gears and got ahead of Asami a little, and got in front of Asami. Asami in turn shifted gears and hugged the turn as Naruto slowly inched away from her as she drove faster. Naruto, not wanting to lose again, shifted once more and slammed the gas, hoping to get ahead of her, but Asami crossed the finish first and went to the pit. Naruto crossing entered another pit and got out of the vehicle as he was now sulking. Korra got out of the car with excitement and took off her helmet. That was amazing. She shouted, I didn't know Naruto could drive like that. She added. Yeah, it took him a while to get the hang of it, but he did learn from the best. Asami answered. I got to admit, I had you pegged wrong. I thought you were kinda prissy. No offense. She added quickly. Asami laughed, it's alright, people usually assume that I'm daddy's helpless little girl, but I can handle myself. I mean, I've been in self-defense since I was little. My dad made sure I would be able to protect myself, and it really helped when Naruto got out of line at times and needed his butt handed to him. Smart guy, so Naruto needs his butt handed to him at times? Korra asked, in case she would have to do it herself. Asami nodded, he can get a bit big-headed at times, but since he would never really fight seriously with me, I would beat him up, especially after a successful prank done to me. Korra giggled, sounds like him. You really like him, don't you? Asami asked with a smile and a teasing tone. Korra blinked at her and nodded, yeah. She said in a light whisper as a light blush graced her face. Asami smiled at her, good, that boy needs a girlfriend instead of all those fangirls he has. Just having me as a friend isn't really enough since he works a lot. She said, but then her expression turned serious at Korra, you hurt him and I'll destroy you. She threatened. What? Korra said in shock of the sudden mood change. Naruto and I have been joined at the hip since we were kids. I look out for him, just as he looks out for me. You do anything to break his heart, I won't rest till you've been punished to the maximum. Asami stated. Korra narrowed her eyes at Asami, I wouldn't. She growled. Asami nodded, good, I hope you don't. She finished as Naruto walked up to them. Damn it, I was so freaking close. One more time, klutz, I know I can win. He demanded. Asami rolled her eyes and smiled at him, once a day was the rule, Naruto. Remember when we first started racing, you wouldn't stop even after it got dark till you won, which you never did, and I needed some sleep. Naruto pouted at her and her stupid rule as he started to walk back with to mansion while muttering to himself with Asami giggling behind him. Korra glaring at Asami's back as she was determined to have her see that she was good for Naruto. As they entered from the door that Pow opened, Bolin was in the middle of his pee-pee dance. Emergency, emergency, coming through, beep beep. He said as he ran to the bathroom. Naruto was laughing as Bolin was running so fast he was picking up dust. Mako was shaking his head in shame. Is there another bathroom I could use? Korra asked Asami. We have a ladies' powder room upstairs. First door on your right, you can freshen up in there. Asami pointed out. Thanks. Korra said as she walked upstairs. Once Korra was out of sight, Asami turned predator to Naruto, you two look so good together. She complimented. Naruto blushed slightly and Kurama looked as though he was laughing. Asami grinned and pinched his cheek, aw, is lil Naruto finally all grown up? She cooed at him. Naruto swatted her hand away and crossed his arms while gaining an even bigger blush, you always do this to me. He said in indignation, go make out with your boyfriend or something. He shot back. Asami got into a thinking position, I'll think about it. She said as she grinned at Mako, who had a slight dusking of pink on his cheeks. Bolin came back a few minutes later and asked Pow for some spray to smell fresh. A second later, Korra came running down the stairs. Hey Korra, what's the roo-woah? The blonde said in surprise as he was grabbed by his collar and pulled to the door. You're leaving already? But I thought, Asami said, but Korra cut her off. Sorry, but I forgot I was supposed to baby bend, babysit the airbender kids, and Naruto was supposed to help me. See you later. She said with a wave as she continued dragging Naruto by his collar. Is this the part where you have your way with me? Naruto asked in confusion. Korra turned an impossible shade of red from the comment and plopped him next to his cycle, drive. She squeaked as she put Kurama in his spot and placed her helmet on. Naruto put his hands up in a surrendering manner, alright, no need to squeak. He said as he put his helmet and goggles on, where we going? He asked. We need to see your mother. Korra said as her face was still had a bit of a blush despite the serious look she still had for some reason. Asking her for permission to marry me? I thought the guy does that. He questioned. Korra's eye twitched at that and her blush returned completely, you're so lucky you're cute. She growled as she held his waist. I prefer handsome, thank you. He shot back and they drove away. So you think Hiroshi manufactured those gloves for the Equalists and framed Cabbage Corporation? Tenzin asked with a raised eyebrow as Naruto and Lin stood by him. That's a bold accusation, but what proof do you have? Lin asked harshly as she didn't want to believe her friend was in fact an Equalist. Naruto remanded quite during the discussion as he tried to figure this whole mess out. Well, I don't exactly have proof, but I know what I heard. Sato's up to something. Korra stated. Lin got into a thinking position, he does have a means, and he has a motive. She whispered in a sad tone. That's right. Tenzin said with a nod. A motive? What is it? Korra asked. 12 years ago, the Anaikai triads robbed the old man's mansion, and a firebender killed his wife Akemi. 1. Naruto said softly. Lin growled, remembering the event. Naruto was there that day too with Asami. She said. Korra's eyes widened. What happened? She asked. Naruto sighed. It went like this. Flashback. The 5-year-old Naruto and Asami were playing outside and decided to head inside to clean up. Asami wiped the mud from her face and glared at Naruto. Really? A mud war? I thought you were going to show me your earthbending. The dirtied Asami questioned. Naruto, also covered in mud, shrugged. I wanted to try out mudbending. It sounded fun. He looked at Asami and then himself, and it was. He chirped as he patted the dirt on him. Asami just face-palmed. A scream echoed through the halls. Hiya. Both Naruto and Asami froze hearing such a horrific scream. Asami turned to Naruto with a bit of fear. Nah Naruto, what was that? She asked in a shaken tone. I don't know. He answered as he took a deep breath. He placed his hand on the floor, trying to feel the vibrations in the earth like his grandmother had taught him. He felt a lot of people entering the house and running around it, and one was heading this way. Naruto grabbed Asami's hand and ran upstairs with her. He found a closet and pushed her into it. Stay here. He ordered her. But she tried to argue, but Naruto cut her off. No Asami, stay here and I'll try and find Aunt Akemi and see what's happening. He said as he closed the door on her. He ran though the second floor of the house trying to find someone, anyone that could tell him what was going on. He finally found Asami's mother Akemi. Aunt Akemi. He said, getting her attention. She turned to him with a panicked look on her face. Naruto, run. She shouted and was hit in the back by a fireball. She flew through the air and landed roughly on the ground. Naruto thought she would get up but she didn't. The big stocky man came out of the hallway and looked right at Naruto. Well, a brat huh, I think that bastard Sato only had a daughter, so you must be her friend or something. What do you say brat, I'll let you live if you bring me to Sato's daughter. He said. Naruto was frozen, his feet just wouldn't move. This monster just killed Akemi, and now he wants Asami too. No. He wouldn't Naruto thought as he got into his stance. The man laughed at him. You want to fight me? He said in a joking manner. He rolled his shoulder. Your funeral, maybe they can have a 2-for-1 to save some cash after we rob this place blind. He joked as he shot a fireball at Naruto. Naruto jumped to the left of the hall and slammed his foot on the floor, causing it to collapse under the firebender. The foo he tried to say, but he fell through. Naruto, not being able to control his bending just yet, cracked the floor under him too and fell. Naruto stood up from all the rubble and heard some rubble moving and turned to see the firebender, just as he punched Naruto right in the face, sending him flying. Little brat, you're dead. He shouted. Naruto. The voice of Asami cried out. Naruto turned to see her friend in tears as she watched him get hit. The firebender saw her and smiled. Well there you are, time to end you too, so just stand there as I choke the life out of your little friend here. He said in a polite manner. He wrapped his large hands around Naruto's throat and started to squeeze and Naruto flailed around, trying to fight back, but sadly he couldn't. Suddenly a rock hit the firebender in the eye, causing him to bleed. He growled as he turned to Asami just as she threw another rock at him. He swatted it away. Fine, you can die first. He said as he got up and was about to launch a fireball at her, but stopped when he looked down and saw a large earth spike going right through his stomach. He turned his head slightly to see Naruto in a striking pose and tried to gasp for air as the spike went through his lung. He died right then and there. Naruto collapsed on his knees and looked at his hands. He killed someone. He just wanted to save Asami and he took a man's life. He started to cry and felt a pair of arms wrap around him and saw Asami crying as she hugged him tightly, which he returned. The two stayed like that till the metal bending police arrived and arrested some of the firebenders, and Lin ran up to the two. Naruto. Asami. She said in a frantic tone. She quickly scanned the scene and her heart sank when she saw a firebender impaled by an earth spike. She saw Naruto shaking and crying as Asami held him and she wrapped her arms around the two and tried soothing them with sweet nothings as she was also shedding tears. It was a few minutes later that they found the body of Akemi Sato. Flashback end. NarutoxKorra muttered in sadness as she heard that he had killed someone at such a young age. Tenzin had bowed his head at remembering the blonde had not been his usual self for about a month till he started to talk about it with Lin and himself. He always had asked if he was a bad guy for killing someone. They told him that killing was indeed a bad thing, but he did it to save someone's life. It was a tragic event. It's possible that he's been harboring anti-bending sentiment all this time. Tenzin said. I will speak to Hiroshi in private about the matter. Lin said in a neutral tone. They started to head home as they would deal with this in the morning. Naruto stood up and started to head towards his bike, but Korra grabbed his arm. You believe what I said, right, Naruto? She said in a soft tone. Naruto winced as he turned to look into her eyes. It's not about believing you or not, Korra. I'm just trying to make heads or tails of this whole thing. I mean, the old man has been nothing but family to me. I want to believe you, but I also want to believe that the man I grew up around isn't an equalist either. He said carefully. Korra looked a little hurt that he didn't believe her right off the bat, but she could understand since he just didn't want it to be true. Deep down, she hoped she was wrong for Naruto's sake. The next day. Ao had opened the door to reveal Lin, Tenzin, Korra, and Naruto. Lin and Tenzin headed upstairs to Hiroshi's office as Korra and Naruto followed them, but they were stopped by Asami and Meiko. What's going on? Why are they asking Hiroshi more questions? Meiko asked. Korra was about to talk, but Naruto covered her mouth. We can't discuss the matters of the investigation at this moment. He said in a monotone voice. Asami got right into Naruto's face. Take off that cop face of yours, Naruto, and tell me. She demanded. Naruto averted her eyes, telling her that he wouldn't talk about it. She scowled at him and turned to the stairs and started to head to her father's office. Meiko stared at both Korra and Naruto for a few seconds till he headed up too. Naruto sighed and headed up too, and Korra quickly followed. As Naruto entered the office, he already saw his mother and Hiroshi conversing. Hiroshi, we just wanted to do some follow-up questions. Lin said in a neutral tone. Hiroshi raised an eyebrow. By all means, Lin. He gestured her to continue. Naruto. She said, and he stood forward. There had been word throughout the grapevine that you have possible ties with the Equalists. He said in monotone voice. Hiroshi looked shocked at this. Naruto, Aunt Lin. Asami screamed in indignation. How could you even think that? She asked. Lin answered for them. We need to follow all possible leads, Miss Sato, but do both mine and the lieutenant's relation towards you both. We wish to keep this as private as possible. Sadly, we are still mandated to ask if we can search your warehouses no matter how much we wish not to. She said with regret. Hiroshi raised his hand to calm his daughter. It's alright, Asami. Lin and Naruto are just doing their jobs. You can search all of future industries as much as you wish. He stated. Lin nodded and walked out the room with Tenzin as Naruto and Korra trailed behind. Korra leaned closer to Naruto. Why did you stop me from answering before? She asked in a whisper. Because, by doing that, you would have really hurt your friendship with both Asami and Meiko. So I told a little lie. He whispered back. Despite his words, Korra was worried because her boyfriend was now risking his own friendship with Asami just so hers doesn't get damaged. As his mother and the other officers looked through future industries, Naruto was staying out of the way per his request, as he didn't wish to do this. His mother understood and he stay out of the search. He leaned against one of the buildings and looked at the space earth in his hand as he bent into a small figurine of his grandmother Toph. Am I doing the right thing, GT? He asked the figurine as he remembered the day she left. Flashback. The 4-year-old, who was almost 5, Naruto was sitting in his room as he heard his mom and grandma shouting about something he didn't understand. The door opened showing his grandma and he went up to hug her. She still had her usual smile on her face. Hey Munchkin. She asked in a sad voice. Not a munchkin. He muttered with a pout and Toph laughed loudly at that. I know, but it's a term of endearment, kiddo. Hey, I have something for you. She said as took a small box out of her satchel and placed it on his bed. She opened the box and inside was a rock. A rock? He asked in confusion. Toph grinned at him. Not just a rock, but space earth. She said. Naruto's eyes lit up from hearing that. He loved hearing that space earth story, so that meant that this was that piece of space earth that Sokka had given his grandmother. Cool. He said out loud. Very cool. Toph said in agreement as she handed it to him. I want you to have it, okay? She said in a small voice. Of course. I can't wait to show Klutz this. She's going to flip. He said in excitement. Toph laughed gently as she ruffed his hair and pulled him into a hug, which he returned. Toph hugged him tightly as she buried her face into his hair. She was going to miss him so much. She let him go and started to talk. I got some things to say, so listen close. You got it? Yep. Good. I want you to live your life the way you want it, not the way your mother wants it. Always do what you think is right, get lots of friends, find an awesome girlfriend for me, and have lots of kids, okay? She asked in a wild and free tone. Okay? Naruto answered with some confusion. I'm going on a trip, Naruto, a long one, but no, I love you lots, Munchkin. Always. The older woman said. I'll always love you to GT, always. He said as she stood up and waved while walking out the door with a big smile on her face. Flashback end. Naruto was brought out of his muses when Korra's voice rang through. Naruto. He heard as he turned to see her and quickly turned the figure back into a bracelet before she saw it. "Yeah?" he asked as he put the bracelet back on his arm. "Check this out," she said as she handed him the letter. He read it and raised an eyebrow. "Are we sure about this?" he asked as it could be a trap or something. "We got nothing else to look on," she said. He nodded at her. "Let's go then." Silk Road Bridge. Naruto, Korra, Lin, and Tenzin walked towards the north end of the bridge till they heard a whisper. "Over here." They heard and an older man wearing a hat and a large coat came out from behind a column. "Listen, I joined the Equalists because I believed in what Amon said. I thought he could make life better for us non-benders, but I didn't sign up for this war," he said. "What do you have on Hiroshi Sato?" Lin demanded. "He manufactured those gloves for the Equalists," the man said. "I knew it," Korra stated. Naruto winced at hearing this and felt saddened that the man he saw as an uncle would join someone like Amon. There are rumors that he's working on something new. Something bigger, some kind of weapon. "We've searched all the future industries and found nothing," Tenzin pointed out. "That's because he has a secret factory," the man said. "Where?" Naruto demanded. He needed some answers. "Right underneath the Sato mansion," he said as everyone was shocked of what they heard. "The Talbender airship. Raiding the Sato mansion is a risky move with Terlock breathing down your neck," Tenzin commented to Lin. "If you're wrong," he trailed off. "I know, I can kiss my job goodbye, but protecting Republic City is all I care about even if I have to go against a friend," Lin said with sadness. "We can't let Amon get his hands on this new weapon," she finished. Naruto was sitting with Korra as he was shaking slightly and taking some deep breaths. This was it, he was going to find out what's going on in Hiroshi's head and hopefully talk him out of this. Korra looked at the blonde with worry. "You okay?" she asked softly as she placed her hand on his shoulder. Naruto shook his head. "No, not really. What if I can't talk him out of this? This is going to hurt Asami so much. Aunt Akemi wouldn't want him to do this, she would only want him to use his genius for peace, not war," he said as he swallowed hard. "It'll be okay," Korra said weakly, trying to make him feel better but knew it wasn't helping much. Damn, she sucked at this sensitivity stuff when it mattered. Naruto grabbed her hand on his shoulder tightly. "Hopefully," he muttered as the airship flew over the Sato mansion and began to descend. They entered the mansion, and the other officers slammed the door open and saw Asami, Meiko, and Bolin with Pabu sitting around. "What are you doing here?" Asami asked in surprise. "We have reason to believe that there is a factory hidden below the mansion," Lin stated. Asami got up in anger. "I think I would have noticed if there was a factory under my house. Aunt Lin, my dad isn't an Equalist, you've known him for years," she exclaimed and she turned to Naruto. "You too, Naruto, has he ever been cruel or mean to you?" she asked as Naruto averted his eyes from her. "Where is your father?" Tenzin asked, wishing to get her attention away from Naruto. "In his workshop behind the house," she answered in a calmer tone. They group walked to the workshop with the other kids in tow as the metal bending officers secured the perimeter. They entered the shop and did a quick sweep of the shop. "Dad?" "Hello?" Asami called out as she entered the workshop. "Chief, the estate's been secured. No one has left the workshop since we've arrived," an officer said. "Perhaps we just couldn't see him leaving," Lin said as she walked to the center of the room. She raised her foot and the slot under it shot open, exposing her foot, and she slammed it down and used her seismic sensing. "There's a tunnel beneath the workshop running deep into the mountainside," Lin said. "What? There's no tunnel," Asami stated. Lin lifted her arms and the metal floor crinkled and she lifted it and threw it to the side. They stared down the tunnel and saw how deep it went and a trolley that went down it. "Whoa, do you think your dad knows about this tunnel?" Bolin asked in a loud whisper. "I don't understand, there must be an explanation," Asami argued weakly. "Maybe you don't know everything about your father." "I'm sorry," Korra said to her. Naruto took a deep breather and patted Asami on the shoulder. "It's going to be okay, I'll talk to him," Naruto said to her and Asami nodded at him. "Officers, into the tunnel. Be cautious," Lin ordered. Asami, Meiko, and Bolin were about to follow, but Lin stopped them. You three stay up here. Officer Song, keep an eye on them," Lin ordered despite their protest. They descended down the trolley and they entered the ground floor and saw many Amon and Equalist banners. "Hiroshi truly likes to go for extravagance," Lin commented. "The old man was always a big spender," Naruto joked weakly, which made Korra laugh a bit. They continued walking and they saw some kind of humanoid robot or something. "And I'm guessing those are the new weapons," Korra said as she looked at them. "Hiroshi was lying alright, but where is he?" Tenzin questioned. Suddenly a giant wall of metal blocked the exit for them, taking away the light. Lin ran up to the wall of metal and tried to bend it but realized she couldn't. "I'm afraid you won't be able to metal bend that wall in," said the voice of Hiroshi as suddenly rows of green lights lit up the room. "It's solid platinum," he said as the mecha tanks came to life and surrounded them. "My mecha tanks are also made of platinum as well. Not even your renowned mother could bend a metal so pure," he said from the mecha tank. Naruto walked in front of the group. "Old man," he yelled. "Yes, Naruto?" Hiroshi asked as he knew what the boy wanted to talk about. "Why? Why do this? Aunt Akemi would never want this. She loved your inventions when they were used to help people, but now you making weapons to bring war," he shouted in betrayal. Hiroshi flinched at the mention of his lovely wife, but he knew that such feeling would come up when he descended upon this path. "I am doing in what I believe in, Naruto. Nothing more and nothing less," he answered. "How could you? Naruto trusted you, he did everything to defend you, and now you just betray him and his mom like it's nothing. Why don't you come out here?" and Korra shouted. "And do what, young Avatar?" Hiroshi said as he cut her off. "Face the wrath of your bending." "No, I think I'll fight from inside here where my odds are a little more equal," he said. "That source was a setup. You lured us down here," Lin exclaimed. "Indeed, Lin," Hiroshi said as his mecha tank's arm launched a cable with a weight at the end of it. Naruto broke off from the group and a mecha tank followed him. He dodged a cable and ran up the wall while magnetizing his feet to let him stay up there for a bit, and he launched himself onto the mech and punched the beep kit repeatedly and jumped off just in time as another cable from another mecha tank shot at him. He landed and launched a cable around one of the arms of the mecha tank and used an earth platform jump to go over a railing on the ceiling and landed on the ground and locked one of his feet into the floor as he raised another earth platform and launched the mech into the air. He quickly locked his other foot into the ground and used all of his strength, no matter how much his muscles were screaming in pain, to keep the mech in the air and let it drop as he snapped the cables and released his feet. He ran to the downed mech and started to raise earth columns in a diagonal fashion and locking one of the arms in the ground and doing it to the rest of the body till the tank was covered in a pyramid of earth. He was panting hard from the strain it took to lift the tank, but turned to see another one heading for him and used a cable to swing himself to safety until he was hit from behind and was shocked heavily from another mecha tank. He tired to endure it till another mecha tank latched onto him and added more voltage to him and knocking him out. Hiroshi exited his mecha tank and looked at the down benders. "I'll say that was a near flawless test run. Load everyone into the transports and deliver them to Amon," he ordered. He walked over to Naruto as two Kai blockers picked him up. Naruto cracked his eyes and looked at Hiroshi in a daze. "He old man," Naruto said with a bit of a slur. Hiroshi looked at Naruto sadly. "Of course you would regain consciousness so soon." "Well, I'm a wessom like that," Naruto said as his eyes started to gain their focus again. "Drop him by his mother," Hiroshi said, and the Kai blockers nodded as they dumped Naruto next to his mom. What they didn't see was Mako and Bolin sneak in and picked up Korra and Tenzin and dragged Naruto and Lin. "Thanks, Guys," Naruto said in a low tone. "Anytime, buddy," Bolin replied. "Not so fast, boys," Hiroshi said as he wore two electro gloves and the lieutenant had his electrified Kali sticks ready to strike the brothers. Bolin dropped Lin and used Tenzin's arm to wave at Hiroshi. "Hello, wow, what really swell scary factory you have here under your giant mansion," he said. "Sponsoring our team, supporting the Avatar, it was all just a big cover," Mako stated in understanding. "Yes, and the most difficult part was watching my daughter traipse around with a firebending street rat like you," Hiroshi responded in anger. "What about Naruto? He's been Asami's friend for years. Do you hate him too?" Mako asked shot back. "Yeah," Naruto said as he wanted to hear his answer. Hiroshi paused and took a deep breath as he looked at Naruto with what everyone could identify as sadness. "No. Naruto is in fact the only bender I can respect due to what he has done for me. If it wasn't for him I would have lost Asami that day, which would have left me with no reason to live anymore. His understanding of my creations, open-mindedness to see their benefits for non-benders and desire for peace is why I couldn't come to hate him." As he said that, a bit of hope returned to everyone's eyes until Hiroshi spoke again. "However, my hatred towards you benders is far greater and I'll do anything to make sure Amon wins this war." With that, Naruto lost all hope for Hiroshi coming around. "But once Amon purifies him of his bending, hopefully he can forgive me and we can try to regain the friendship we had, as he is a much better choice for her than you, boy," he said with a sneer as he charged his electro gloves. "Dad, stop," said the voice of Asami. Hiroshi turned to face his daughter in shock. Asami's face held nothing but betrayal. "Why?" she pleaded. Hiroshi lowered his head. "Sweetie, I wanted to keep you out of this for as long as I could, but now that you know the truth, please forgive me," he asked. Asami just continued to look at her father, unsure of what to do. "These people, these benders, they've been the cause of people's suffering for ages. All the bending rulers like Jin the Conqueror, Fire Lord Sazan, Fire Lord Ozai, Yakin, and every other bender who craved control over all nations have been responsible for countless deaths and wars that resolved nothing towards peace. They took your mother, the love of my life, from me, and they almost took you too. Don't you see that Amon can be the one to do what even the Avatar can't do? He'll create a peace that'll last forever by eliminating bending. Without bending there would be no one who could rise to power to try and rule all nations like the previous benders have tried to do. There'd be no gangs and no thugs to threaten innocent people. Without benders we could live in a world where everyone would be treated as equals and no one would have the power to kill anyone else with bending or technology once we create the new world. Hiroshi paused for a moment. If it wasn't for bending, Naruto wouldn't have been forced to perform an act that no child should ever do just to protect you from them. They've ruined the world, but with Amon we can fix it and build a perfect world together. We can help people like us everywhere. He took off one of his electro gloves and handed it to Asami. Join me, Asami. He asked. Asami just stood there, afraid and confused, but after a moment she gained a determined look in her eyes and she walked forward and took the glove and placed it on. No, Mako whispered in sadness. I love you, Dad. Asami said as she shocked him. The lieutenant went to attack her, but she kicked his first kali stick out of his hand and caught his other arm and shocked him with the glove. Let's get out of here. Mako as he grabbed Naruto and headed to the hole they came from just as the other mecha tanks came to life. Metalbender airship. Korra helped Mako lay Naruto on a bench and she thanked the firebender as she rubbed Naruto's hair. Naruto cracked his eyes open and smiled at Korra. Hey water princess, how many did you take down? He joked softly. Korra swatted him on the head and he yelped. What? He asked. Don't joke about things like that, she said with a huff as she folded her arms. Sorry, he muttered. Korra sighed and kissed him on the forehead. It's okay, just don't do crazy stuff like that. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You know, since we have to fight those things now, I will be doing crazy stuff like that, right? He asked with a sly expression. Korra palmed her face. Why do you always have a witty comeback? She asked with a groan. Because it's part of my charm and you love it, he said instantly. Korra got into a thinking position. This is true, she concluded. Naruto looked at Asami in sadness. I'll have a talk with her once I'm rested up, he muttered as he felt a weight on his stomach. He looked down to see Kurama on him. Hey boy, he said and the fox walked over his body and nestled in his hair. Yeah, love you too, he said to the fox. With Lin and Tenzin. My metalbenders are on their way to Amon and it's all my fault. Terloc's right, I failed as chief. First thing in the morning I'm handing in my resignation, she said in sadness. No. You can't give up like this, Tenzin argued. I'm not giving up, Lin said with a grunt as she sat up from the bench she was laying on. I'm going to find my officers and take Amon down, but I'm going to do it my way outside the law, she said with determination. Who's going to take your place? Terlock could very well have someone in his pocket to take control for him, Tenzin stated. Lin gave him a smile. I know someone who can do it just fine, she said as she looked at Naruto. Tenzin looked surprised. Lin, he's too young to take such a responsibility, plus I don't think he's in the right state of mind after everything he went through with Hiroshi's betrayal. Lin glanced back at him. I know, but tell me someone who's better for the job than a Bifong, she said. Tenzin's argument died in his mouth as he recognized that glint in her eye as Naruto had it most of the time. Naruto and Korra. Korra was holding Naruto's hand when Mako walked over. Is that spot at the air temple is available? He asked the two. Korra smiled at him. Yeah, Asami can come too, after everything that's happened, she said as she glanced at Asami. Thanks Korra, he replied. Look out for her, okay Mako. She's in a very delicate state right now. Hopefully both of us can get her out of it, Naruto said. Mako looked him in the eye and nodded as he walked away to Asami and held her close. Naruto smiled at the scene as he gave yawn. I'm going to sleep for a bit, water princess. Okay, I'll be here when you get up, she said. Thanks, he muttered as he closed his eyes. Unknown to everyone there, a certain fox was thinking with amusement. After the whole fiasco at the Sato mansion, Naruto was recovering in his home, the Bifong Manor, for temporary rest till Tenzin had prepared for Asami, Mako, and Bolin's arrival at the island, who were in the meantime staying at his home with Korra, who wanted to see what his home looked like. Dream. Naruto was once again looking at the other him in his dreams. He was currently watching his other self fighting some Redeed kid who was one hell of a sandbender. All of a sudden the Redeed covered himself in sand was look half human and half demon. Some pink-haired girl was blocking the Redeed's path to some black-haired kid. The Redeed slammed the pink-haired girl with his sand claw, trapping the girl. His other self started to fight back with clones of himself and a giant toad. The Redeed turned into a giant sand monster and the two colossal beasts fought it out. When the two beasts disappeared in a poof of smoke, his other self and the Redeed landed on top of some trees and went to punch each other, but his other self beat the Redeed. The two landed harshly on the ground where his other self started to crawl with his chin to the Redeed. That loneliness, I know all about it, but then I found those precious to me. That's why I fight so hard, because I care for them, and if you ever try to harm them, I'll kill you. His other self said, thus ending the dream. End of dream. Naruto woke up in a heavy pant and was slightly covered in sweat. What was that? He questioned out loud. He sat on the edge of his bed trying to figure out what that dream was all about, but he got nothing and didn't notice Kurama watching him from his own bed. Inch by inch, step by step, and you'll get what it's all about soon, Naruto. Kurama thought as he snickered. It was about 6 in the morning as Naruto sat by his family's Zen garden and looked at the sand. He remembered his dream about the sand bender and waved his hand by the sand. All it did was move a bit. He frowned as he jumped off the deck and landed in the garden. He got into a stance and tried to bend the sand in a better position. All he got now were sand strikes, not real manipulation of the sand like he saw in his dream. He then got into an air-bending stance and started to move in circular motions. While doing this, the sand started to pick up around him. He grinned, this may be fun. He said as he continued to bend the sand with a bit more of refinement. Cups? Bolin asked as he looked around the kitchen, and Kurama pointed to the far cupboard with his tail. Thank you. The earthbender said in a chipper mood as he decided to make some breakfast. Korra lazily walked into the kitchen with her hair down as she plopped herself onto a chair and laid her head down on the table. Morning. She mumbled. Good morning. Bolin said in return as he got into a thinking position. Spices? He asked the fox and Kurama pointed at the cabinet by the oven. Thank you, my second favorite furry companion. He said as he took out some spices from the rack. Mako and Asami walked in as Mako yawned a bit. They each sat at the table and looked at Bolin. Bro, what are you doing? Mako asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, since it seems that Naruto doesn't have any servants around, I decided to make some breakfast. Bolin answered as he flipped something in a frying pan. Korra raised her head. Yeah, if Naruto is rich and all, why doesn't he have servants? She asked with a half-asleep expression. Well, that's because Asami started but was cut off by another voice. Because mom thinks that if you want something, get it yourself. Naruto said as he walked into the kitchen and was covered in sweat. Since we're rarely home due to our job, we really didn't see the need for them. He finished as he sat down next to Korra. Korra took a whiff and held her nose. Whoa, what were you doing? She questioned as she waved her hand in front of her face. Naruto took a quick whiff and shrugged, working on something new. He answered cryptically. Like what? The Avatar asked. He grinned in her face, which caused her to blush a bit. Secret. Was all he had to say. Korra was about to question him further, but Asami interrupted her. Don't even bother Korra, once Naruto says it's a secret he won't budge. It makes trying to figure out your birthday present a major pain. The heiress joked. Korra pouted as Naruto stood up and headed to the bathroom. I'll wash up quick for breakfast, Bolin. You better hurry or you're getting a cold. Bolin shouted back jokingly. One quick shower later. Naruto plopped down in the kitchen all clean and started to eat some of the eggs and other breakfast goodies that Bolin made. So how's Aunt Lin doing? Asami asked with concern. Naruto's good mood vanished at that moment as he knew they weren't going to like hearing the news she's retiring. Naruto muttered as he put down his fork and took a big gulp of oj. What? Korra, Asami, Mako, and Bolin shouted in shock. Naruto sighed. I know, but that's not all. Oh, what's next? Korra asked with sarcasm. Naruto muttered something incoherently. What? Korra asked as she put her hand to her ear and leaned in close. She picked me to be in charge of the Metal Bender police force. Naruto said in a calm voice. There was utter silence as those words left the blonde's mouth. Everyone had different reactions to this. Korra was shocked. Asami was both surprised and proud. Mako was indifferent. Bolin was shocked but jumped out of his seat. Yes. We are friends with the new chief of police. We are untouchable. He announced in glee. Why would she pick you? I mean, not that it isn't great, but I mean you're still a teenager. Korra questioned. She was of course very proud of him, but this was a big responsibility and she was worried how he was going to handle it, especially with Amon and the Equalists running around. Part of her was also worried about how this would affect their relationship if Naruto now had less time to be with her. Naruto sighed as he ran his hands through his blonde locks. I know, but I guess she wanted to keep the Beefrongs running the police station, but also for another reason. He said. What other reason? Mako asked after taking a sip of water. So that Terlock doesn't get his hands on the police force. The chief to be answered. Korra, Asami, and Mako nodded. Bolin raised his hand. Explanation to those who are not so in the political loop. He asked with confusion. It's simple, Bo. Terlock's been going on a campaign to get Naruto's mom fired, and now that she's resigned, Terlock is going to try and get control of the police force to expand his influence in Republic City. Mako said. Bolin looked at his brother questionable. How do you know all that? Mako looked at Bolin with a black expression as he raised his right hand, because I read the paper. Mako answered back as he showed the now revealed newspaper in the right hand he raised. Bolin just sweat dropped at the answer. Well anyway, to celebrate my last day of freedom, let's spend the day Naruto style. Naruto said as he pumped his fist in the air. You make it sound like you're going to prison. Korra joked and everyone gave a good laugh. Ha ha ha. Naruto laughed dryly at her. So what's on the menu? Asami asked with a grin as she knew what he wanted to do. The usual? He asked the heiress. The usual. Asami confirmed with a nod. Everyone else just raised an eyebrow at them as they had no clue what they were talking about or what the usual that they mentioned was. Korra frowned ever so slightly that went completely unnoticed at how in sync the two were. Beach party. Naruto and Asami shouted loudly. At the beach. Korra and Asami were in the female changing room putting on their swimsuits. Korra had taken off her shirt and looked through the bag Asami had given her that held her swimsuit. She instantly blushed red seeing it. Wow, what is this? She squeaked out in shock. It was a two-piece swimsuit that was blue and had white lining as the strings to the bikini and was double-laced around the bottom piece. That is a swimsuit, a two-piece to be more precise. Asami commented as she got into her new swimsuit, which was almost an exact duplicate of Korra's, except that instead of blue it was completely red with twin strings tied to the bikini, while the bottom was a bit less wide than Korra's. That's not it, I know what it is, boo, but I can't wear that. Korra nearly shouted. She couldn't wear this in front of Naruto, what would he think? Crap, she really didn't know how to deal with this since her social skills were blocked heavily by the White Lotus, stupid White Lotus. Come on, you want Naruto to see your great figure, right? Asami questioned with amusement as she finished getting her suit on. But she trailed off till Asami stopped her. Tell me, does Naruto do things to get you to blush? Say with a commenter in action. The heiress questioned her changing buddy. Yes, how did you know that? Korra asked with narrowed eyes. Asami just grinned at her, a grin which reminded her of Naruto before he pulled a prank or something. Never mind that, think of this as payback. Now change, or do you want me to help you? Asami asked in a teasing tone. Korra just sputtered at her and turned red. No. I can do it, she said as she put her bottom on and threw the top part behind her back and pulled the strings from under her arms and tied them behind her neck as the front of it secured her modesty. As Asami was leaving the changing room, she dropped one last comment. I think Naruto will like the fact you don't have a tan line. She quipped as she speed walked out the room. Korra just growled at the girl. How the hell did she know that fact? Naruto was relaxing on a tanning chair as he watched the crystal blue waves crash against the white sand of the beach. He was wearing a pair of green swim shorts with his Space Earth bangle on his left bicep as usual with a pair of sunglasses. He was also enjoying a fruit smoothie during the hot rays of the sun. Mako was lying in a chair nearby relaxing too. Hey Naruto, where are all the people? Bolin asked as he was blowing up a beach ball. That's because this is a privately owned beach by both the Bifrongs and the Sato, but I guess, since all of the old man's accounts have been frozen, the Bifrongs own it for now. The blonde answered. Wait. You two own this entire beach? The voice of Korra asked. Naruto lifted up his glasses and turned to face Korra, but dropped the fruit smoothie on the sand as he froze when he saw what Korra was wearing and how he now had a good look at her figure. She was well-toned, no doubt due to her training, her stomach was nice and flat with some muscle on it, and she had a nice tan all over, no doubt due to her living in the South Pole, and her chest was nice too, he thought. Yeah. He stuttered. If he had a shirt on, he would be pulling the collar to get the steam out from him due to how hot he was feeling seeing the water princess like this. He was really wishing he had been in the water to help him stay cool from what he was seeing right now, cause he was now feeling like a volcano that's beginning to awaken. So what do you think? Korra asked in her usual tone, but had a blush on her face as she averted her eyes from Naruto's, but she took a quick peek and saw that hot six-pack of his. Did she just lick her lips for a second? You look gorgeous. He said breathlessly. Korra's cheeks turned an even darker shade of red. Asami was smiling like the Cheshire Cat. Now how to make this even more fun? She said as Mako was just staring at her like Naruto did with Korra. Naruto was swimming in the water till he saw a wave coming at him. He looked to see Korra riding on top of it on an ice board and then she jumped right at him. Whoa. The blonde shouted in surprise and caught Korra. He was just about to ask her why she did that, but the waves slammed on them both. Barry surfaced and breathed in some air, and Naruto turned to Korra. Easy water princess, he said, coughing out some seawater and shrugging at the bad taste it left in his mouth. You could have hurt someone. He finished. Korra rolled her eyes. Come on Naruto, we're in my birth element, I think I'll be fine. I was talking about me. He said with a deadpan expression. Oops, Korra said as she rubbed the back of her head in embarrassment and had a sheepish smile. It's cool. He said as he splashed her in the face and he smiled at her, now we're even. Korra had taken a menacing look. You think you can take me in my element, Bifong? Oh, it is on. She shouted and sent a large wave at the blonde. Naruto had just realized his mistake at challenging a waterbender to a splashing contest. Oh crap. He muttered as he stood frozen and looking up at the top of the wave that hit him and sunk him below. They continued for about a few minutes till Korra obviously won, but Naruto didn't go down without a fight. Let's head back to shore. Naruto said as he started to swim, then he felt a big wave building under him. How about we take the expressway? Korra said as she grabbed his hand while she enlarged the wave and rode back to shore at high speeds with about a 20-foot wave. Guraya. He shouted out in both fear and a little anger. Wahoo! The water tribe girl shouted in glee. The wave crashed on the beach and Korra landed on her feet and looked for Naruto. Hey Naruto, where are you? She said in a loud voice. She turned to the sound of shifting sand and saw Naruto was buried up to his waist, head first. Ouch. She said in a low tone and winced, that had to hurt. The sand opened up and Naruto shook himself off and whipped his hands around himself to collect the sand all over his body. I think I'll take a rain check on the next express water princess. He said with a chuckle as he turned the sand into a bowl and dropped it to the ground. Right. Korra muttered and cursed herself for doing something stupid. So, what next? Naruto asked. Sand building contest. Bolin announced as the next activity in question. Yeah, sounds fun. Asami added. I'm game. Mako said with a shrug. Who's going to judge? Korra asked. Kurama. Naruto and Asami said at the same time. What? Korra, Mako, and Bolin said. Naruto shrugged, little guy's got an eye for art. He replied. He would just pick you. Bolin argued. Asami laughed, no, he actually picks which one is better. Trust me, we tested this out when we were little. She retorted. Bolin thought about this for a second and nodded, fine. The fox may judge. Mako went for the classic and filled a bucket with sand and flipped over and put a flag on top of it. It also had a mop that was superheated with fire bending, thus turning it into a circular tube of glass cut in half with water in it. Mako looked at the fox, well? He asked. The fox shook his head and went to the next one. Dismissed by a fox. Low blow. The firebender muttered. Asami was going for a bit more creativity and made a 2-foot-tall car out of sand with good detail. Kurama looked at her questionably, what? She shrugged, it's a sand building contest, not a sand castle contest. Asami stated like if it was a fact of life. Kurama nodded and swayed his head from side to side, saying it was a maybe and walked away. Korra did a little bit of sand bending and made a sand replica of Naga. So, how'd I do? Korra asked. It was an exact replica of her animal guide and she really didn't have an eye for art, but she thought she did alright. The fox nodded once and walked to the next one. Bolin followed Korra's example and made a sand replica of himself that was striking a pose. I call it me, myself, and I, Bolin said dramatically as he struck the same pose. The fox started at him and yipped, which he translated as amazing, but it was in fact for idiot. Kurama went to his owner next. Naruto was last up and slammed his foot into the sand and waved his arms outward and made a perfect replica of Republic City. I think this one is my boy. The said with a chuckle and the fox nodded as he yipped. Everyone walked up to it and admired it. So cool. Asami said in awe. Nice job Naruto. Mako said he was really impressed at the detail in the sand sculpture. Wow. Korra muttered as she marveled at it. I think I know who won. Bolin announced and patted Naruto on the shoulder. Man, how did you do that? He asked his fellow earthbender. My grandma taught me sandbending. Naruto replied. Well, she really taught you well. Bolin said as he wondered if he could be able to do that. A little later, Korra, Mako, and Bolin were playing in the water and getting their butts handed to them by Korra in a splash fight it seemed they didn't learn from Naruto's defeat. Naruto walked up to Asami and tapped her shoulder. You okay? He asked her as he sat down next to her. Yeah. Asami said with a fake smile. Naruto frowned at her, lose that Asami. He said and she had a frown on now. You always could tell. She muttered. I'm your best friend, I have to be able to know that. He stated to her. It sucks. Asami said in a soft whisper with a sob. Naruto put his arm around her shoulder. I know. He told her. Asami started to cry and hugged Naruto while crying on his shoulder as he rubbed her back. Let it out Asami, let it all out. He whispered to her. Asami nodded in his shoulder and continued to cry. Korra sent Mako and Bolin flying with a big wave and turned to wave to Naruto and saw him hugging Asami. She narrowed her eyes and scowled as the water around her started to bubble. After having fun at the beach, Naruto decided to get some dinner with everyone, so why not stop at his favorite place? "So Naruto, where are we headed?" Bolin asked excitedly with Pabu on his shoulder, since the blonde said they would be going to his favorite restaurant. "Maybe a fancy place or something." "I think I know where we're going," Korra said with a smirk. "Where?" Mako asked with interest. "Ichiraku's." Both Korra and Asami said, but Korra just turned to Asami with a light glare for answering. Asami just raised her eyebrow at the hostility Korra had been giving her since they left the beach. Bolin gasped, "We're going there?" he said in excitement. Mako gave a low whistle since that place was always had long lines going down the streets. "Don't we have to wait online?" Mako asked and Bolin deflated at that. Naruto shook his head, "I kinda co-own the place." He slyly answered, and Kurama gave a disgruntled yip at that while sitting on the blonde's head. Mako and Bolin just looked at him with wide eyes. Once again Naruto walked in front of the long line coming out of the noodle shop and waved to Am. "Party for 5 Mr. Beefrong?" Am asked as she did a head count of Naruto's group. "Yep. Go right ahead," the waitress said with a small bow and led them in. Everyone walked past her to get in, but Bolin had a bit of a blush on his face with a goofy smile as he waved to Am, who in turn waved back. They all sat down and everyone ordered what they wanted. Naruto noticed Bolin staring at Am and nudged him from under the table. "She's single," he said in a sing-song tone. Bolin sputtered at that. I'm thinking she looked very professional." The earthbender said in an attempt to cover his staring. "Yeah sure and I'm the next Fire Lord," Naruto quipped with a grin. That had gotten a good laugh from the rest of the group. Am arrived a few minutes with their order. "Please enjoy," she said with a smile and a light bow. They finished their meal and Naruto paid for everyone. "See you Am," Naruto said and nudged Bolin with his elbow. Bolin jolted up from the jab. "Yes. It was great to meet you. Best meal I've had." Yeah." He finished lamely. Am giggled at him a bit. "You're funny," she said with smile. He. Bolin gave an awkward laugh and had a small but growing blush on his face. Mako grabbed his shoulder. "Come on lover boy," he said as he dragged his brother. "See ya," Bolin said with a wave while being dragged. Naruto laughed as he followed them. Korra gave a quick laugh and ran up to Naruto's side, while Asami shook her head in amusement. They headed back to the Beefrong Manor so they could get ready for heading to the Air Temple Island the next day. Korra kissed Naruto goodnight, though it was more of a harder kiss from what they normally did for some reason. Naruto collapsed in his bed and closed his eyes. He was going to need all the rest he could get, for tomorrow he was going to be the new chief of police. The next morning, Naruto woke up and got ready for the big day. He put on a black version with gold trimming of the metal bending uniform to show his new status as chief and headed downstairs. He noticed a note on the table that was from Korra, saying that they went ahead to Air Temple Island. It said that they didn't wake him up since they knew he had to get ready for today. There was also a PS from Korra that she gave him a kiss on the cheek to wish him luck. She was starting to get bolder with their intimacy. It seemed not that he minded in the least. Naruto looked down to see Kurama by his leg and picked up the fox. "You ready for today?" he asked. Kurama yipped a yes and licked his face. Naruto laughed a bit. "Well that makes one of us. Personally, I'm nervous as hell." Kurama rolled his eyes at that. "Don't you roll yours at me you little furball. I'm about to take the biggest step in my entire career. I have every right to panic," he said in mock anger. The fox just whined at his stupidity and squirmed out of his owner's hold and ran to the front door. "Hey, get back here," Naruto yelled as he gave chase. He got outside and already saw the fox in his special seat in Naruto's bike, looking all innocent. "Let's just go," Naruto said with a sigh as he put his goggles on and shifted his uniform to make his helmet pop out. The blonde revved up the bike and peeled out of his driveway and head to the station. Air Temple Island. Korra arrived with rest of the group to the island was greeted by the airbender children. Ikki gave a quick tour and answered some questions from Bolin. Denora instructed her sister and brother to show the boys their living quarters as she and Korra lead Asami to hers. As they walked, Jinora decided to start a conversation. "So Asami, how long have you and Naruto been friends?" "Since we were kids," Asami answered. "Interesting," Jinora half-heartedly replied as she looked at both the older girls. "Stupid boob monsters," she thought as she felt a bit frustrated at the older girls' figures. They just seemed to support her thoughts of not having a chance to get her blonde crush. Korra opened the door to show Asami her room. "I'm going to check and see if Ikki and Milo haven't made the boys go crazy yet," Jinora said in a sad tone as she walked away sulking. Asami raised an eyebrow at the retreating airbender. "What's that about?" she asked pointing at Jinora. "Jinora has a crush on Naruto. She's been okay around me, but I think she's hoping she has a chance with him," Korra answered in an irritable tone. She knew Jinora didn't wish for the two to break up and was semi-supportive, but the little airbender still seemed to hold on to the chance of getting the blonde, not that she would ever let him go though. Asami giggled, that's sweet that he has a little admirer. Does he know? Korra just shook her head, nope. Asami snorted, typical Naruto, he can be a bit dense at times. She said with a chuckle. Well, here's your room. I know it's a little rustic compared to what you're used to. Korra said. I think it's really charming and the best part about it, nothing here reminds me about my father. Asami said with a bitter tone, thank you for your hospitality. She said as she turned to Korra. No problem. Korra said with a smile. Have I done something to offend you lately? Asami asked abruptly. Caught off guard, Korra looked shocked, what? Why do you say that? Asami shrugged, yesterday you seemed to be glaring at me behind my back. So I was wondering what the hostility was for. Korra looked abashed at being caught, it was just that, you and Naruto were hugging, and you two seemed to be so in sync that I felt she trailed off. Jealous? Asami finished. Korra seemed to find the floor very interesting at that moment, yeah. Asami placed a hand on her shoulder, and Korra looked up, it's okay, you just got a boyfriend who happens to have a girl for a best friend, so the two of us hanging together probably seems uncomfortable to you. She said as she patted the avatar's shoulder a few times in comfort. Thanks for explaining it to me. I really didn't have any friends to hang out with as a kid, so this is really new to me. Korra said in a sad tone. Asami just smiled at the girl, seems Miss Rough and Tough was just like any other teenage girl. The knock at the door grabbed their attention. Come in. Asami said and Tenzin walked in. Good day ladies. Asami, welcome to the island. The monk said with a nod. Thank you for having me. Asami said with a bow which Tenzin returned. He turned to Korra, Naruto is going to be inducted as the chief of police later. We will both be going. Tenzin stated. Of course. Korra said with a nod, she wanted to go and support her boyfriend. Can I come too? This is going to be a big day for him, so I really want to go. Asami said. Tenzin nodded, yes Asami, you may come as well. He said exiting the room. I hope he isn't nervous. Asami muttered to herself. Korra raised an eyebrow hearing her, Naruto. Nervous. We are talking about Naruto here, right? The Water Tribe girl said jokingly. He's not invincible Korra. Even Naruto can get nervous. The era said. This I got to see. Korra said rushing out the door. Asami just shook her head in amusement. Metal bending police station. Naruto took a deep breath as he walked up to the podium and remained focused, with all the flashing of cameras taking his picture. He saw Korra and Tenzin standing on his left side and Korra mouthed a good luck to him and he smiled at her and turned to the crowd. As you know, my mother has retired from her position as chief of police. I would like to thank all those who have sent their hearts out to her for a speedy recovery. I have been chosen by my mother to be the next chief of police. Some of you no doubt are wondering why someone so young such as I would be taking charge of such a position of responsibility. It's true, while I may indeed be young, far too young for some people, I have been around this position my entire life and know the ins and outs of it. I won't make promises I know I can't keep, but I will say this, I will do everything in my power to keep the people of Republic City safe, no matter the cost of my own safety, that I promise. I know most of you are wondering if the police will be working with Councilman Terlock, and I will answer yes, the police will be working with the councilman from time to time when it involves Amon and the Equalists, all other times the metal bending police will be going above and beyond to continue protecting Republic City like they always have, thank you. Naruto said with a small bow and the crowd cheered for him and he smiled to them. As the crowd dispersed Korra come running to Naruto and gave him a big hug and kiss on the cheek, nice going chief. Korra joked. Thanks Water Princess. Naruto replied with a smile. They heard a yip and turned to see Kurama in Asami's arms. She let the fox jump on her shoulder, congratulations. She cheered as she sent a look to Korra and the Avatar girl gave a small nod and Asami gave Naruto a big hug. They heard the sound of a nose blowing and saw Tenzin dabbing his eyes. Are you okay Uncle Tenzin? Naruto asked with a sweat drop. Yes, I'm fine I just something in my eye is all. Tenzin said with teary eyes, he was really proud of his godson. Yeah, sure. Korra said in a sarcastic tone. Greetings Chief Bifong. Said the voice of Terlock. The group turned to see the Northern Water Tribe representative councilor. Councilman. Naruto said with a curt nod. Terlock smiled at him and saw the closeness that he and the Avatar seemed to have and stored that tidbit for later. Avatar Korra, long time no see. Now that your little pro-bending distractions are over, I look forward to your return to my task force. He said with a curt bow. Forget it. Korra said firmly, there is no way I'm rejoining your vanity project. She said defiantly. That is unfortunate to hear, but I'm sure you'll come to your senses as you have in the past. he said as he looked at Naruto, no doubt you will be helping our young chief here, so we will be seeing each other. Don't hold your breath, bub. I'm only going to help Naruto and that's it. Korra said firmly, Tenzin's been right about you all along. You played Naruto's mom, but Naruto's too smart to be played by you. She said as she walked up to him, here's more news for you, you need me, but I don't need you. I'm the Avatar. She finished as she put her hands on her hips defiantly. Hairlock just looked at her with his obnoxious smile, you are not in fact the Avatar. You are just a half-baked Avatar in training. Which reminds me, how is your airbending going? Korra took a sharp breath and her arms fell to her sides. Made any significant progress with that? He asked further. Korra said nothing. I didn't think so. He said condescendingly. Hairlock. Naruto said with growl and bit back his retort as he put an arm around Korra. If you will not be a part of my task force, then you had best stay out of my way. The councilman finished firmly as he walked away, I will see you at a later date Chief Bifrong to discuss some things. He added as he made his exit. Naruto glared at his retreating form and turned to Korra as his eyes softened, don't listen to him water princess, he's just an asshole and trying to shack you up since you won't work for his task force. The blonde said as he pushed a strain of hair off her eyes and tucked it behind her ear, you're amazing and you know it. He finished as he gave her a nice kiss on the lips. Korra blushed from the kiss and returned, thanks. She muttered to him. Any time? He said to her as he looked at Asami and mouthed watch her, and the heiress nodded. Chief Bifrong, you're needed. Said Seiken as he walked up to Naruto. Naruto sighed, you don't need to call me that Seiken. He said with an annoyed look. Seiken's lips twitched to a small almost unnoticeable smirk, I know. Naruto rolled his eyes, great, just what I need to be the butt of the jokes around the station now. Come on Seiken, show me that mountain of paperwork I have to do. He said as he waved to Korra, see you later water princess. Bye Naruto. Korra said as she, Tenzin, and Asami with Kurama in tow head back to the island. Chief's office. Naruto sat in his new chair or his mother's chair and looked at the picture of a younger version of himself with his mother and grandmother smiling like no tomorrow. I miss those days. He thought to himself as he picked up the photo and gently traced his fingers over Toph's image. It was days like these that made him wish he could have spent just a few more days with his grandmother before she just left on her trip. Seiken, do you think I'm the right person for this? He asked the older officer as he placed the photo back down. On the record I would say yes. Seiken said. And off the record? The blonde asked in worry. I would still say yes. Seiken said with a smile, you're young blood and the poster boy for the new recruits, people are willing to follow you because you're a good leader and watch out for everyone you work with, a quality your mother has and has clearly passed to you. Now here's your paperwork. The older officer said as he dumped the pile of papers on the chief's desk. Naruto looked at the stack of papers in front of him and groaned now he knew why his mother wished she was a firebender at times. Hours later. Finished. Naruto cheered as he put the last piece of paper in the outbox. Now to check on a few more things, then I can get some sleep and hopefully a warm dinner from Pima. He said as he stretched to get the kinks out of his back. He was heading out his door just as screams started to go around the station. Oh. Come. On. Right when I was about to leave. Such misfortune. He shouted and muttered the last part to himself and headed down. He saw some electric flashes, indicating the use of electro gloves, and saw Kai blockers hitting officers who didn't have armor on. You guys have got some balls attacking this station on my first day. Naruto shouted as he glared down at them in fury, drop the gloves and put your hands in the air, and I'll promise to make the beating I'm going to give your asses will only be slightly painful. He growled. The Kai blockers and whoever they had freed ran out the door as fast as possible. They really like doing things the hard way, don't they? Naruto said to himself with a sigh as he jumped over the railing on the second floor and headed to the garage and put on his goggles, and his armor covered his head. He hopped on his bike and revved it up and peeled out of the garage in pursuit of the truck with two equalists on motorcycles tailing behind it and in front of it. You are so not getting away while I'm on the clock, that would suck on my first day. Naruto growled in his helmet as he followed them, not even seeing Korra, Asami, Meiko, and Bolin in a car he just passed by that intersection. Was that Naruto? Meiko asked in shock. Yep. Korra and Asami answered at the same time. Let's give him a hand. Korra ordered and Asami nodded as she shifted gears to follow the young chief. Naruto zoomed ahead and as a truck was about to block his way, he skidded under it and continued going. He raised both of his hands and shook them twice and shot them upwards. Suddenly two earth pillars shot up under the two rearing equalists and sent them flying into the air and landed roughly on the ground, and Naruto closed his fists and a hand of earth caught them, making sure they don't leave anytime soon. He saw a car chasing him and looked in disbelief. What are you doing here? He shouted over his engine and the wind from the speed they were generating. We're the new Team Avatar. You want to join? Bolin shouted. Naruto's hand twitched as he wanted to slap Bolin upside his head for asking something like that right now. "Alright crew, help me out," the blonde said. "Crew?" Mako asked in confusion. "Yeah, but with a K instead of a C for Korra, crew," Naruto shouted. "We should make t-shirts later," Bolin suggested. "We'll talk," Naruto said. Mako stood up and launched an arc of lightning at one cycle, and Bolin sent a barrage of rocks at the other. Now it was just them and the truck. "Korra. Bolin. Help me make a semi-loop-to-loop ramp," Naruto ordered. The Avatar and other earthbender nodded and all three made a large loop and the truck drove right up it since it had nowhere else to go and flipped on its back after it tried to stop. Naruto shifted his armor off his face and whooped, "Nice." He cheered and jumped off his bike and captured those trying to get away with Korra and the rest helping. The press arrived to take their pictures with the captured equalists just as Terlok and his task force arrived. "Avatar Korra, what do you think you're doing?" Terlok asked angrily as he stormed up to her. "She assisted me in capturing these idiots who thought it was a genius idea to do a jailbreak on my first day, but we got them," Naruto said, interjecting whatever Korra was going to say. "That's all well and good, Chief Bifrong, but you tore up the city to do it," Terlok added with irritation. Naruto looked back to see the damage and shrugged, "Nothing a little earthbending can't fix," he said uncaringly. "Fine, but this is Avatar Korra's last warning to stay out of our business," Terlok said and was about to leave when Naruto spoke. "Sorry, but the new Team Avatar is now a deputy group to the Metal Bending Police and can act on behalf of myself and they only answer to me," Naruto said with a sly grin. Terlok turned around and glared at Naruto. "You're playing a dangerous game, Chief Bifrong." "As are you, Councilman Terlok," the blonde countered. Terlok left with a huff. "That was awesome. We're deputies now." Bolin cheered as he jumped up and down with excitement. "Nice," Mako said with a smirk. "So crew?" Korra asked Naruto as Terlok's task force brought the captured equalists to their trucks. Naruto shrugged. "Avatar Ong's group was called the Gong, and so I thought why not?" he said with a smile. Korra put a finger to her lips in thought and nodded. "I like it." "Alright, but head home for now and I'll follow you guys later," the blonde said as he gave Korra a quick kiss on the cheek and headed for his bike and drove back to the station to finish up and get some sleep. "Aye," Korra shouted, waving him off. Next day, police station, afternoon. "The what?" Naruto's voice shouted from his office and everyone in the station winced. It seems the boy really takes after his mother if he's got her shout down. In Naruto's office, Tenzin arrived to explain what new law Terlok had gotten to pass. "Is the man insane? All this is going to do is instigate them more," Naruto roared at the monk. Tenzin had his fingers in his ears and took them out. "You have your mother's yell, that's for sure," the monk quipped, trying to lighten the mood and getting the ringing in his ears to stop. Naruto smiled at that. "Thanks, I've been practicing." Tenzin lost his sense of humor and looked at Naruto with utmost seriousness. "What now?" the monk asked. "We try not to step on the non-bender's toes and hope things stay peaceful, but we know that isn't going to happen. That damned idiot really enjoys making messes that we have to clean up," Naruto said with a grunt and Tenzin nodded. "Keep me posted on anything new," the airbending master said. "You do the same for me," the chief said. Hours later. Naruto was in the middle of his paperwork when his phone rang. "Hello?" he asked. "He did what?" Naruto roared. He kept listening and slammed the phone on the hook, destroying the phone. He stormed out of his office and shouted, "I want my bike ready 5 minutes ago." The new recruit scrambled to the garage to get his bike ready for him. Naruto walked to the garage. "Thanks," he said to the rookie and drove to where Terlok just fucked up big time. Dragonflat's burrow. As he drove he saw the power was out and felt his anger reaching new heights. Some ponytailed bastard was about to get his head shoved up his ass. He stopped his bike where he saw Terlok's task force centered around and saw a lot of people shouting, most likely to have their power back. He saw the perpetrator and shouted, "Terlok." But he heard another voice say the same thing and turned to see Korra walking up to the ponytailed bastard too. "Chief Bifrong, Avatar Korra, pleasure," he said. "What is the meaning of this, Terlok? These people are no equalists as far as I can see. Just non-benders who want their rights back," Naruto stated. "These people are the enemy, Chief Bifrong," Terlok countered. "No. They're not. Now turn the power back on," Korra ordered. "I suggest you and your playmates return home, Avatar Korra, and leave this to the professionals," Terlok said in a dismissing tone. "We are not done here, Terlok. You go behind my back to get some of my officers to help you with this farce of an equalist rally. That is something I can't just stand by and watch," Naruto said in a monotone voice. Terlok just glared at Naruto and shouted to his men, "Round up these equalists," he ordered. "All officers stand down. This is a direct order from your chief, stand down," Naruto ordered and none of the metal-bending officers moved. Any attacks on civilians will be met with equal force Terlock, so I suggest you tell your men to stand down. He said to the waterbender. Terlock growled at the earthbender and saw Asami and sent a water whip to catch her arm. Asami saw the water around her arm and struggled. Hey, let me go. She shouted. You're under arrest. Terlock stated. What? You can't do that. Mako said in surprise. Actually I can. She's a non-bender out past curfew and her father is a known equalist conspirator. Terlock states as he pulls an Asami, but a spear of earth rose from the ground and slices the water whip. Asami Sato is under my protection Terlock. She has been interrogated personally by me and holds no allegiance to the equalists. Naruto says as he steps in front of Asami, I should have you arrested for assault of a minor councilman. You're a toddler playing an adult's game chief, you should go back to your playpen. Terlock growled at Naruto. The blonde just smirked at him, shows what you know, I've been playing this game since I was in a playpen. They each stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, till Terlock spoke, you win this round Chief Bifong, but know this you've made an enemy today. He warned gravely. You can't always make friends. Naruto quipped and watched Terlock leave and started to head to the civilians. Terlock muttered something only Korra heard, no one crosses me and gets out unscathed Bifong, you'll see. He muttered darkly. Korra narrowed her eyes at that and followed Naruto. The crowd thanked him and Korra, though Korra felt like she didn't really earn it since Naruto did most of the talking. She was going to have to talk to Tenzin about some negotiation strategy. She was really just going to beat Terlock up if he didn't cooperate. You guys head home where it's safe. I have to go back to the office. Naruto said with a tired sigh, this was getting a little old, fast. Alright. Korra said reluctantly, promise me you'll be careful. She said as she gave him a quick kiss. Come on Korra, it's me. I promise though. Naruto said reassuringly. Good. The Avatar said nodding as she and the rest of the crew headed back to the island. Naruto grabbed his bike and took a slow ride back to calm himself. An hour later. Did I get a new phone? Naruto asked as he entered the station. Yes Chief Bifong. We just got it replaced 10 minutes ago. Said the secretary. Naruto nodded and headed up to his office. Naruto collapsed in his chair and tried to close his eyes for a quick nap. He suddenly heard a beeping noise and opened his eyes to see where it was coming from. He looked under his desk and his eyes opened wide in surprise. Oh, and he didn't even have time to finish his sentence as he tried to raise an earth wall to shield himself but was unable to in time as a bomb blew in his office, with him no doubt as the target. Air Temple Island. Tenzin's phone was ringing and he picked it up. Hello? He asked. His eyes opened wide. What? Tenzin, what's wrong? Pima said with concern as the call had woken them up. Pima, get dressed and wake up Korra and get Ugi ready. I have to call in. The master monk said in a panic. What's wrong? Pima ordered. There's been an attack at the station. Someone blew up Naruto's office. Tenzin started to shake while he was still inside. Pima gasped in horror and rushed with all the power of a pregnant woman could to get Korra and the flying bison ready. Tenzin took a deep breath and dialed Lin. Bifong Manor. Lin was still in bed from her soreness and cursed as she had to miss her son, taking on the most important job of his young life. Her phone started to ring and she picked it up. Hello? She said with a grunt, she was sleeping damn it. What? Tenzin slowed down. What are you saw what? She asked in a whisper. No, not again, not again. Lin said as she felt a certain memory fill her mind. Memory? Alright, promise me you'll be careful. Lin said to the man before her as she sat in bed with her swollen stomach from pregnancy, which she happened to be 6 months in. Come on Lin, it's me. I promise though. The man said with mischief in his emerald eyes that was accompanied by his unique blonde hair as he rubbed her belly. Good. Lin answered with a nod. 2 days later. Lin stood over the grave of the man she loved and the father of her child. Tears were streaming down her face, but the rain that was coming down made sure no one could tell she was crying. Liar. Lin muttered as she rubbed her stomach and walked away with tears in the rain. End of memory. Naruto. She said as she forced herself out of bed and head to the hospital. Hospital. Korra, along with Asami, Mako, and Bolin were sitting in the waiting room with Tenzin and the rest of his family. Inora and Ikki were crying, and Milo didn't understand what was going on, while Pima held them close and had a few tears herself. Asami was crying against Mako's shoulder, and he was holding her tightly with a solemn look on his face. Bolin was quiet, and he too held a solemn face and kept taking quick peeks at Korra to make sure she was okay. Korra was not handling it well and was trying and failing to hold her tears back as Tenzin was squeezing her hand and rubbing her back to try and soothe her. Tenzin. A female shouted, and the group turned to see Lin in a black overcoat with her uniform on. Lin. Tenzin said solemnly. How is he? She asked with desperation. We're not sure. They have the healers working on him now. The monk said. And Lin? Asami said as she hugged and started to cry on her. Lin rubbed her back soothingly. It's okay, this is Naruto we're talking about, he'll bounce back. The elder earthbender said, trying to reassure not only Asami, but herself. Suddenly a doctor walked to them, Councilman Tenzin. How is he? Lin asked. The doctor gave a small smile at Lin. He'll live. He has a minor concussion with some burns on his face, along with some bruised ribs and other injuries from the explosion. His armor protected him from the brunt on the blast, and the healers have already healed the burn marks on his face, so there won't be any scaring. He'll most likely be out for a few long days, so we'll keep monitoring him. The doctor said. The group sighed and cried in relief. Can we see him? Korra asked quietly. Yes, but 2 at a time only. The doctor said, walking away to see his other patients. Lin and Tenzin were the first to go in. They entered to see Naruto lying in a bed looking completely unconscious. His armor had been removed while he was still in uniform, which was torn, and parts were burned off, while his hair looked partially charred from the explosion. Lin and Tenzin saw some burn marks on his body that were beginning to heal slowly. Lin approached him and held his hand to her face and started to cry. Scaring your mother like that, you're so grounded after you're better. She said tearfully. Tenzin just stood in the corner and smiled at his godson. It would have destroyed Lin if he hadn't made it. He just hoped that Korra would be alright, since he had never seen the girl so shook up before. The next 2 to come in were Asami and Korra. Asami had a teary smile on her face. You always know how to make the girls who care for you cry, Naruto. Not a very gentlemanly thing to do. She said as she brushed his unruly locks with her hand. Korra sat on his other side and was afraid to touch him, afraid she would hurt him more. You know, I once had such a crush on this idiot. Asami said wistfully. Korra's eyes snapped to her once she said that and watched her warily. Asami saw the look and laughed lightly. I said once, Korra. I'm over it. Though I never did understand why I got over him myself. Maybe it was because I had grown to love him so much as a brother that I didn't want that to be ruined by a new relationship. Asami said sadly as she turned to Korra. Did he know, or did you two ever? Korra began asking nervously, but Asami cut in. No, we didn't. I never even told him about it, not that he ever noticed since he was dense when it came to girls' feelings. Although a small part of me wonders what it would have been like to be with him, the rest of me is happy the way it turned out. For so long Naruto was like the brother I always wanted, and all those years we spent together really helped us to get to know each other really well. I may be in the friend zone, but I still care for him all the same. She finished with a smile. Thanks for telling me. Korra said quietly. Actually, thank you. I've kept that bottled up for some time now. The heiress said in return. Korra walked out of the room, but not before giving Naruto a kiss and walked outside for some air. She just kept replaying the entire day in her head till she stopped at a sentence she heard. She growled and rode Naga to see if her theory was right. City Hall. Terlock was working on some paperwork with the council secretary when his window slammed open and the cold air rushed in. They turned to see Korra standing there menacingly. You and I are going to talk. The young Avatar stated. Memory. There he was again, watching his other self fighting, always fighting. This time it was with a friend. The two morphed into some sort of demonic beings and took charge at one another with lightning and maelstrom in hand. Todori Rasengan. They shouted and their powers clashed. It died down and his other was on his back gripping a metal headband with a line through it. Why? Was what his other self asked. To walk my path of an Avenger, I needed to sever all bonds. Goodbye, Naruto. The other boy said, leaving his other self in the rain. End of memory. Back in Terlock's office, Korra was walking up to Terlock with anger fueling her adrenaline. The man had openly admitted that he tried to kill Naruto as the blonde had continued to get in his way. Korra became filled with rage and attacked him, intending to take him down and see that he never hurts Naruto or anyone else ever again. She had fought him with all 3 elements she had mastered and was eventually able to overpower Terlock. She was about to deliver the final blow when he suddenly started to use bloodbending without a full moon. She tried fighting against it, but it was no use as Terlock threw her against pillars and walls until she started losing consciousness. So now she was beaten, tied up, and at his mercy. She saw him closing a set of doors on her that looked like a truck's back door. Where are you taking me? Korra demanded. Somewhere no one will find you. Say goodbye to Republic City, Avatar Korra. You'll never see it or your boyfriend ever again. Terlock said menacingly. In a last-ditch effort she shouted and tried to burn him with some fire from her mouth, but he got out of the way. You can't do this. Let me out. Ah. She shouted as Terlock started the truck and drove away to who knows where. Naruto, help me. She whispered to herself and held back from crying at the thought of not seeing him again. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.